what life was like with a gas car, what happened.
Did you learn to drive in a gas car? Or was it the Leaf?
The first time I drove was in our van. So we have a big family, and so we needed to buy a van
Okay.
just for size. Of course, we bought it in like 2008 when the EV option first came out. So
Right. It's kind of like what life was like with a gas car, what happened.
So comparing the van, or was it the Leaf?
the first time I drove was in our van. So we have a
Okay.
just for size. Of course, we bought it in like 2008 when the EV option came out.
Right. It's kind of like what life was like with a gas car, what happened.
So comparing the van, or was it the Leaf?
The first time I drove was in our van. So we have a big family, and so we needed to buy a van when the EV option first came out.
Right. It's kind of like what life was like, what happened.
So comparing the van, or was it the Leaf?
Right. It's kind of like what life was like. Okay, welcome to Leading the Charge for Electric Vehicles. We are here today in the beautiful Orcas Island, and we welcome you who are here today and our distinguished panelists. And what we have here today have a look at Electric Auto Association's website. We have a great piece on that there. I'd like you to save your questions for the end if you would. And what we'd like to do here today is to learn and to share all of our thoughts about how we can advance the cause of electric vehicles here on the island there. So
like
what
you
we're
to
going
save
to
your
do
questions
is
for the
to
end, if you would.
have me talk for a
And
little
what
bit
we'd like to do here today
about
is to
the
learn
EV
and
market
to share
and put you in the
all of our
picture of
thoughts
some
about how we
recent
can
market
advance
research about, you know, how and why people buy electric cars and why they don't. And then we will move to our panel discussion and some questions from the audience. I am Raejean Fellows. I am the president of Electric Auto Association. And you'll see my background here on the slide, which actually I was an entrepreneur at the age of 27. I started a small business with $200 from the front porch of my house in a suburb of Chicago, Illinois. And so my early history was around staffing and human resources, and later in my retirement, it became about the environment. And now, being a grandmother, it now becomes about the environmental causes that I believe will make a better future, not only for us, but for our future generations. So you can see here from my resume that I have 2 electric vehicles. I started with a Kia Soul. I traded that, and I now have a Model S. So who is the Electric Auto Association? We have been educating and advocating for the promotion of electric vehicles since 1967. So we are a 50-year-old organization. This meeting here today and online with our online viewers is sponsored by the San Juan Island Electric Vehicle Association, a new chapter that has just started in January by Bruce Neiden and Ryan Palmetier of the Conservation District. I talked to you a little bit about why electric vehicles, as if it's an assumption. We know we have climate change and we know we need to combat the air, but some people ask the question, how clean really are electric vehicles, you know, from the time of manufacture until the time that they're finished, their useful life with batteries and all that. Are they really all that clean? And I have an interesting video for you from the concerned scientists that can explain in less than 2 minutes about that, and I'd like to share it with you now.
Here's a question. How much cleaner are battery electric cars compared to gasoline-powered cars? To find out, the Union of Concerned Scientists studied the total global warming emissions of each vehicle throughout every stage of its life, from manufacturing to driving to disposal. And there's a big difference. Both cars start out on the assembly line with similar parts made of raw materials like steel and aluminum. For a gasoline car, this manufacturing and assembling stage generates about 7 tons of emissions. Battery electric cars, meanwhile, are powered by, you guessed it, a large battery. This requires more energy and materials to produce for an 84-mile range battery electric car, bringing its emissions tally up to roughly 8 tons. But what happens when they hit the road? Gas-powered cars produce pollution with every gallon of gas they burn, with even more emissions coming from extracting, refining, and transporting the fuel to gas stations. Electric cars, on the other hand, run on electricity, which can be much cleaner than gasoline, depending on how the electricity is made. 2/3 of Americans live in regions where charging an electric car produces fewer global warming emissions than driving even a 50-mile-per-gallon gasoline car. By the end of their lives, the average gas car will rack up 57 tons of global warming emissions, compared to 28 tons for a battery electric car. Disposing and recycling each car adds less than 1 ton of emissions. And remember that electric car battery? It can be recycled or reused. In the final tally, an 84-mile range battery electric car cuts global warming emissions by more than 50% compared with a similar-sized gas-powered car, making up for the battery's manufacturing emissions within 1 year of driving. And as the country adds more and more renewable sources of electricity, driving electric will get even better. So there you have it, straight from the engineers at the Union of Concerned Scientists. Electric cars, clean and getting cleaner.
There we have it. So, you know, usually when I turn up at meetings with people, There's some guests that I have with me, and I'm not so comfortable with them not being here. So I would like to invite them here now to talk about. I don't want to talk about them behind their backs. They are beautiful. They are clean. They are quiet. And I've handpicked a few of them for just how low maintenance they are. These aren't the kind of guests that are going to eat you out of house and home. They're really nice to have around. They won't make a mess in your garage. And they are, quite simply, the best guests you could have around and take me to the most amazing places when I get so charged up. They are, you guessed it, the electric car. So this would not be complete if I didn't introduce you to some of these wonderful guests. And the first on the list is the Mercedes-Benz Smart Car. Available for just under $15,000. You get a federal tax credit if you qualify. You can get them on leases for less than a cost of a cell phone. Another car in this category would be the Fiat 500e. Look at the Hyundai Ioniq, a gorgeous car from $29,500 with the federal tax credit of $7,500, 110-mile range. And look at that, the MPGe equivalent is 150 miles in the city and 122 on the highway. Try doing that in a gas car. And what about, you know, the ever popular Leaf? In fact, it's America's best-selling affordable EV. Next one on the list, the Chevy Bolt, Car of the Year, 238 miles of range. You can get it for $35,000, and then with your federal tax credit, it brings it way down. Chevy Volt. This is a plug-in hybrid, goes 53 miles electric, and then can switch to gas. So just a little story about that. Jay Leno bought a Chevy Volt. He drove that Chevy Volt every day from Beverly Hills to the studio, and at the end of the year, he bought $2 worth of gasoline. So this plug-in hybrid can function like a completely electric around-town car, but then when you need to leave in town, go to San Francisco, go to Las Vegas, wherever, it's a gas car with its total mile range of 420 miles. The Mitsubishi Outlander. This car has been extremely, well, really SUV, extremely popular in Europe. We've been waiting for it for a couple of years. They finally released it just last December. And, you know, federal tax credit of $5,836 with 25 miles around town, all electric range. You know, we've been waiting for an SUV, so many here. So that completes my list of guests, which brings me around to back with the Electric Auto Association, which I represent here today, the 50-year-old organization. You say, what do they do? Well, we have 50-plus chapters that are full of EV passionate owners whose knowledge and experience educates the public, promoting rapid EV adoption. What does that look like? Here's some of our members across the Western Hemisphere, all those little yellow dots, and across the world. And if you look at a couple of those little white pop-outs, we've got members in Denmark, Egypt, and Ghana. Who is San Juan Electric Vehicle Association? It is one of our, the great driving electric life. You can belong to them, as it says on this slide, for $35 for an entire year. That gets you our e-magazine at Electric Auto current events that people love. It's a 40-page, you know, full-color publication. So, my first electric vehicle. In the year 2015, not that long ago, 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about electric cars. I had a solar roof. I wanted to be 100% fossil fuel free in my retirement years. So this was my dream. I had to get an electric car, and the first one I settled on was this little Kia Soul. You remember the ads, the little hamsters in that car? So fun. Well, I liked it. It had good, visibility. I could fit my grandchildren in it, etc. But I loved it. 93 miles, all electric, great around town car, so affordable, $23,000 after incentives. And now I'll tell you a story of what I did when I got the car. I knew that I needed to know more about electric vehicles, so I went to Drive Electric Day in San Diego at Liberty Station. I was a volunteer there. And they asked me to find the electric cars as they drove by and direct them into a parking area. And then in this large parking area, they were going to have a drone fly over top and film all these electric cars to show how many people were driving electric. Well, you might think that's an easy job, but telling the difference between electric car and the gas cars wasn't that easy. You look for maybe the HOV sticker. Anyway, somehow we got the cars in there. Then the idea was to have a tailgate so that EV owners would hang out by their cars giving information to buyers. And I noticed this one fella who was standing by his Mercedes. I thought, a Mercedes, electric car, fabulous. Walked over, he opens up his trunk and he says, oh, it has Tesla parts in it. Very impressive. Now a little crowd gathers around. He starts just naturally talking about his car and how he loves it. And I noticed the dynamic that happened between his authentic voice as an EV owner and the EV curious, and how the information got transmitted. And I thought, this is really powerful. It was very similar to when a solar customer showed his neighbor his $10 a month electric bill. It was a no-brainer. I'm going to go get solar. And the same thing happens when an EV owner, enthusiastic, talks to a person. Anyway, my story is that I did it for the environment, for future generations. Here's some information based on research. Why do buyers select an electric car over a gas car? The top 3 reasons are, number 1, save money, and usually that was some incentive, cashback credit that they were attracted to. Number 2, the environment. Number 3, the new tech. People want to have the technology that's better than yesterday's, and they don't want to be left behind with old technology. And performance, very important. There are many people that just are real car people, and they get into it because they put their foot down and the car goes. As I put it, it's not put your foot down and wait like you do with a gas car. Put your foot down and go. What were the first biggest initial attractors? And by the way, this research was done from Strategic Vision Marketing, and this new vehicle experience study actually surveyed 250,000 people. So it was a very substantial survey. So the things that initially trigger people to be attracted into looking at an EV and buying one are cash incentives and tax breaks. We love a deal. And performance, what I just talked about with no waiting, and fun, and the environment. The biggest rejection factors are what most of us have come to understand, and I even had it in the beginning, range anxiety. Am I going to run out of energy? There isn't a gas station on every corner. Uh-oh, what will I do? Next was lack of charging convenience. Oh, if it's not on every corner, is that going to put me out? Am I going to be waiting somewhere? And the next one is misunderstandings about cost, because we love Tesla for how wonderfully they've promoted EVs, but people think of Tesla and they think, oh, that's a great car, but I can't always afford that. And they don't realize that there are over 40 electric vehicles available today, and many, many of them are under 30,000. And of course, the initial cash outlay is a factor that's tough for some people. So let's talk about public awareness. How aware is the general public about electric vehicles? The truth is, the average car buyer in the United States today did not seriously consider, nor took a test drive in an EV during their last car buy. This lack of serious consideration further was largely unchanged in research that was done in 2014 and 2017, even with so many of us working so hard on public awareness. This study was done by the Clean Vehicle Transportation people at UC Davis, Dr. Ken Karani. So that leaves us in a tough spot. Let's look at how many EVs are in the San Juans. We counted 174. In the whole state of Washington, there are 24,624 and almost 3 million autos in Washington. So it's a small percentage at this point of the total driving public. The demographics in the San Juans, about just under 16,000 people on all the islands. About half of them are on San Juan Island itself. 66% are owner-occupied, 34% rental. The median family income is $58,000. This is a little deceptive because we have part-time vacation owners who are at higher income levels. We have places like Deer Harbor, Orcas Island here, which is well over 100,000. So we have a pretty prosperous, mid to high level income people at the San Juans, and yet we have some people at slightly lower levels of low to mid income. The average age is 41, so it's fairly young, and about 2.2 in the household size. So overall, who are today's EV owners most likely to be at the moment? They are male, they are married, younger, pretty much under 50. They're about 47 to 50 years old. They have children at home. They're college educated. They work in a professional field, and their median income is 150,000 plus. They are largely early adopters and open to innovation. So the study said that while income doesn't make an EV buyer, it is an important dynamic that plays a role in whether people think they can get into an electric vehicle. So the summary conclusions of this new vehicle experience study were that EV sales are increasing, but not at a rate that government agencies had hoped for, and that we need to attract less affluent buyers and provide vehicles that don't compromise, in other words, range and price. In some situations where decreasing the need for two-car households helps those in lower income levels. We need more affordable cars in the $20,000 to $25,000 range and more education demystifying pricing, showing affordability. Other barriers are charging. 40 to 60% of the people surveyed had charging concerns on the availability of charging stations, on the range that the cars would go, and on the length of time it would take to recharge. Who can help accelerate adoption? Well, here in the San Juan Islands, we're very fortunate in having APALCO, the co-op. APALCO and the San Juan Islands Electric Vehicle Association really make perfect partners to effect the change in public awareness of electric vehicles. Why? Because APALCO has access to nearly every San Juan Island resident, and I understand there's probably about 1,100 members spread, people who are connected to APALCO's electricity. They are community-focused co-op, not like an investor-owned utility that has to make a profit. And the San Juan, Islands EVA is a chapter of passionate, knowledgeable EV owners educating and advocating EVs. So these two make the perfect partners. What's in it for APALCO? What is it that utilities need? Utilities need revenue. They need demand for electricity because the more power that's used, the lower the kilowatt hour is cost to customers. But the utility also needs kilowatt hours used in a time frame that's beneficial to grid management. So in other words, they don't want everybody demanding on it all at once, or it'll throw it into a higher tier, costing everybody more. So EVs are beautiful for this because they use power mainly at night. which is an ideal solution to increase demand and to enable APALCO to have a stable pricing and grid management. EVs replace gas cars. You can see the cutting of the gas cable here, powered by dirty energy, with EVs powered by clean energy. EVs help complement conservation programs with increased demand for electricity. So while we're saving electricity by getting more efficient refrigerators and all other kinds of ways of saving, at the same time we can cope with some more demand and have stable pricing and efficient grid management. There's another thing about EVs that will come in the future, in the not too distant future, called V to grid, vehicle to grid. And already you saw that Nissan Leaf that was 150-mile range Nissan Leaf 2018. That Nissan Leaf is currently ready to share power in 2 directions. It's not happening yet, but it will happen. And that means that the EV batteries can be used to store power. And you might say, well, are the cars really that stationary? How are they going to store? You know, they're running all around. In actual fact, 90% of cars are stationary at any one time and can be plugged in and could be plugged into the grid to help manage the power flow. So it avoids purchasing power when it's at high cost. It avoids dumping clean power when there's too much power available. And it helps increase reliability of power because you have another source that's actually storing the power. Here's some ways that OPALCO could support EV adoption. Let's look at some of the incentives offered by other utilities. They offer things like time of use nighttime rates. So they lower the rate at night, encouraging you to plug in your car, which you're going to do anyway, and go from midnight to 5 a.m. at a very, very low rate. Some utilities offer online applications for vehicle selection. They work on things like multi-unit dwellings, subsidy of charging infrastructure, helping to bring power to parking lots where there are apartment buildings. They sponsor events like National Drive Electric Week. They provide cash incentives, sometimes some programs to first responders, to teachers and firemen. There's one in San Diego for $1,000 for that. OPALCO, I understand, offers free chargers already. That's a $500–600 value. Some utilities offer deep discounts to their own employees, thinking that our employees need to be driving electric if this is something we're really committed to. And they provide the EVA associations with educational brochures, things like Ask Me About My EV buttons. So here's some recommendations for OPALCO. Continued commitment of EV adoption, sponsor events, sponsor what we call EV 101 talks, where people gather to learn just some of the basics of EVs, like charging and how do I get all my incentives, and do I qualify for anything else like an HOV lane, et cetera, and kind of really help bring people in to understanding what driving electric means and demystifying it all. You can also, what I call, adopt a chapter. There's something I call the chapter toolkit, because we have our EV owner educators are out there, but they need some tools to help them when they're engaging in the public, and I'll show you that in a minute. Very importantly, some utilities offer cash incentives at time of purchase. If OPALCO added that in, that would be a huge help, because we know, as we saw earlier, that that's one of the most important triggers to buying. And bulk buys. You can buy bunches of EVs at deeply discounted rates. Municipalities do this, utilities do this. This is a terrific way to get a lot of cars on the islands quickly. More charging infrastructures. OPALCO have a good look at what we've got here on the islands and see what you can do to make that in line with your EV driverships. And your utility website should be extremely EV friendly and show that that's a focus, and make it really easy for people to find out about EVs. And remember how many people, 1,100 people or more, you know, all the residents, 15,000 people could be logging on to the OPALCO website to pay their bill. What better place than to promote this? So here's at the San Diego International auto show, and we have what we need in our chapters are things like those banners. He's got a shirt on saying electric auto. We do posters there. We need tents, we need flags. You know, the average cost of a startup kit is, you know, $2,500 to $3,500 to really put our members in a place where they have the tools to do the work. You see there, the fellow Scott, they asked me about driving electric, about his car. And then you'll see here, again, San Diego, for example, partnering with its local utility, San Diego Gas and Electric. Here we have an EV owner who is showing some people the PlugShare app, which shows all the charging stations which are available. So if you look here, we've got, what does PlugShare look like in the San Juan Islands? So we have charging stations, and ooh, look at all those over near Victoria. And we have a bunches in San Juan as well, in the San Juan Islands as well. So kind of to wrap up this, I'm going to give two ideas and one problem before we get to our panel. The first idea is, what if we had a bold goal of putting an EV in every San Juan Island home that can plug in at home at night? This would be actually more than 500. It would probably be 1,000 EVs in the San Juans. A stretch goal would be get gas cars off the islands altogether. You know, Mackinac Island up in the northern Upper Peninsula in Michigan has no cars on that island. They have horse-drawn buggies. Why not have just EVs? No gas cars on the island altogether. No gas cars on the ferry. Can you imagine our ferries with all zero-emission vehicles? Can you imagine being in the, maybe one day they'll make a ferry that's powered with electricity, with batteries. Wouldn't that be wonderful not to have to smell those fumes? So here's the second idea that we talked about, getting EVs on the island, a bulk buy. So what a PALCO could do would be a bulk buy of used and new EVs and offer them over a 2-month period. You know, here's the sale. You've got to buy them now. And they would be offered first to low to mid-income people, and then thereafter others could fill in. Here's an idea for a campaign. Maintenance costs got you down, hard to find a mechanic on the island, tired of your gas car, go electric. EVs have 1/10 the moving parts of a gas car. Save money, save time, go electric. And this bulk buy idea has been used in Boulder, Colorado, many other cities, and you can get amazing results by a facility of buying a bunch of them, offering them a deeply discounted rate, making it easy for people to get them, and then the program has a beginning and an end, and it can even go multiple times a year. You can do 2 months in the first quarter, 2 months in the summer, 2 months at the end of the year, so people know there's another one coming too. So that's an idea to get more EVs over here. So how to best affect change in human behavior, in car buying behavior? When we think about how do people buy cars, what excites them, what really motivates them, and Ryan was telling me that this favorite ad I have is Matthew McConaughey in a Lincoln, and driving a Lincoln, gas-powered Lincoln, but still very attractive, a celebrity and this beautiful car, and the ad was filmed on San Juan Island. And so they take these cars to exotic locations, they put celebrities in them, the cars look really wonderful, right? So what's happening there to us? How are we being impacted? Well, it's hitting our emotions. It's so attractive, it's what we want. So we have to keep this in mind when we're talking about electric vehicles, because we have to excite people and we have to have enthusiasm, and because that catches. We respond to new offerings. So every time a new EV comes out with more range, and we also respond to good deals. And we need to keep in mind my story of the Mercedes-Benz EV owner is that the message, when it's delivered by the trusted voice, these grassroots EV owners, they can lead the way one person at a time, and you can end up with an island full of electric vehicles. One problem. The one problem that I see is something we really need to work on, because you have no car dealers other than one used car dealer on San Juan Island. There are no cars here to test drive, and people, like to feel and touch a car and that major level of decision. So we're going to talk a little bit more and get some of your help on this later when we get to our panelists. So in summary, the San Juans really are the perfect place to drive electric. With El Palco and our local electric vehicle association working together, we can inspire, we can excite, we can give some financial incentives, and we can educate. We can dispel some of those myths about lack of affordability and increase our infrastructure. So what can you do to help? Well, the EVA chapter, you can volunteer. You can be a speaker. You can find a speaker for them. You can be an event leader. You can help with meetings. You can become an EV owner educator yourself, turning up with your car to talk to the general public and engage them. Our next EV event is 4th of July, when Raejean Palmatier, the president, told me he would like to have 30+ electric vehicles in the famous Friday Harbor 4th of July parade. So the San Juan Islands EVA, and of course you can join it, and here's information on that going to electricauto.org. So thank you for your interest in electric vehicles. Here's a picture that Raejean gave me of some of your bolts and leaves and other vehicles right here in the San Juan Islands. And thank you for letting me talk to you about electric vehicles. For sure, it's my favorite thing to do, and to be with other people who care about our environment. And here in the San Juans, it's just so much more to the heart, because our environment is so amazingly, stunningly beautiful, with the marine life being so sensitive. This is something we need to protect for now and for future generations. So with that, I will turn it over to our panel and ask our first panelist, Chris, to tell us a little bit about herself and then also about her EV journey.
Sure. Thanks so much, Raejean. I'm really excited to be here and quite inspired to be on a panel with some pretty tremendous women. My name is Chris, and I live here on Orcas Island, moved here in 2017. I wear two hats in terms of what I do for a living. My husband and I own the oldest solar installer business in the state of Washington, which is Rain Shadow Solar here on Orcas. But I also work for a large environmental organization doing work with sustainable transportation. So a lot of the projects I work on between solar energy generation and sustainable transportation, there's a lot of overlap. I am an avid sailor. I race sailboats, and for volunteer work, I do a lot of projects related to biodiversity. My favorite critters, apart from my dogs, are reptiles, amphibians, and birds. And for education, my background, I have degrees in business administration, biology, and then my graduate work was in ecology and evolution, looking at salamanders. So my husband and I own a Nissan Leaf, so we have an electric car. We also have an electric scooter, and we have a solar installation, which means that our Leaf is now powered by the sun, so we're really proud of that. Sort of my background with getting into an electric vehicle, I learned to drive in a 1977 Chevrolet Chevette. It was oxidized blue, and the door pin fell out on the freeway going over 520, for those of you, who know about freeways here in Washington. I spent a little bit of time on Santa Catalina Island in the Southern California, they don't have cars there. They're all electric golf carts. And so it's really fun to drive electric vehicles. And you can tell a normal internal combustion engine is about 45% efficient. Electric vehicles, it's over 90%. And so for folks that are really interested in the technical benefits and the engineering with electric vehicles, when Raejean is talking about there is no pause when you push the accelerator, it's just immediate performance, it really is a lot of fun. And so I can think of that one story when I was on Catalina thinking, wow, this is really something. And fast forward a number of years, having a Nissan Leaf on Orcas Island is tremendous. We have a 100-mile range, have no problems, and that includes when Justin is using the Leaf to go onto other islands to go talk to people about renewable energy. And so we have just loved it and recommend it very highly.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. Let's go on to Emma. Emma, tell us about yourself.
It's great to be here today. My name is Emma Toran, and I'm 17 years old. I've lived on Orcas since I was 1 year old, and I currently am a junior at the local high school here. So not Orcas born and raised, but pretty much as close as you can get. My dad and my stepmom live here, and I have 3 younger siblings who were all actually born and raised on the island. And so I've grown up in this environment of caring about the environment and about each other, and this great community that's really here for a lot of support. And just a little bit about me, I do debate and leadership clubs, and really just a bunch of different stuff involved in my school and the community. I do newspaper and 4-H. I live on a little hobby farm at my dad's house. It's pretty cute. We have goats and chickens and rabbits and horses and geese and ducks and guinea pigs. I mean, we have everything in small quantities, but it's really sweet. And so that's the sort of caring and just fun and explorative environment that I've grown up in. I sort of approach environmentalism from a beauty standpoint, and also, from a standpoint of this is the way I live. I use metal containers and water bottles in my daily life all the time instead of plastic. In 7th grade, I learned about the environmental and sort of the monetary cost of moving paper bags to the grocery stores, and why in fact they're almost just as bad as plastic containers and plastic bags at the grocery stores. And so after that, I made the decision never to use those sorts of paper bags again. And so I'm the kind of person who will force my parents to carry out 20 odd items because they didn't bring their reusable bag in, which is just the sort of thing that I feel like the islands, you have those people on the islands, and the people that are going to go the extra mile in sort of a weird way, admittedly. And so I approach it from, it's practical not to use those paper bags, and also it's gross when you look to the side of the road and you see garbage. And so that's the sort of environmentalist I am. Is I do believe in global warming, but even if I didn't, I wouldn't want to use this stuff anyway, because it doesn't look nice when you look out and you see all this garbage and you breathe in this thick air. And so that's the way I want to approach these cars too, is yes, use them for the environment, and also use them because, why would you not? Just sort of that practical aspect of it. And so, I've been very lucky to grow up in this environment of eco cars. When I was 6, my dad bought a 2007 Prius, which I was raised with. And, for us it was the environmental factor, and then just how much money a Prius saved at that point was just a lot more. And then when I started driving, I liked the Prius a lot more than our big hulky van with its hay smell. And so I took over the Prius, and at that point my stepmom, who I think she was online, just sort of stumbled upon EV cars and fell in love with a Nissan Leaf. And it was the right decision for them at the time to switch over. It was a really affordable option. As I looked into getting a new car, we wanted to make sure I had a car that was safe, and also I had a small budget. I don't have endless money, and I have to work for what I buy. And so it just seemed like a good transition. And so they picked a 2013 Nissan Leaf, which they absolutely love. I mean, my stepmom, Liesl, will go on and on and on to you about what it feels like to drive the Leaf, and how great it is and how efficient it is. And it's the only car we've ever had to date that has stayed clean for longer than 2 months. It is clean now as when we bought it. We love taking care of it. It gets our garage, all cleared out, and it's definitely something that has changed the way my family goes about buying cars and just going through this world of like travel, transportation. Of course, on the islands, you have school buses, but you don't really have public transportation the same way that you do in a city. And so people, to get around, especially on Orcas, you have to have a car. If you live in town, you can get around town, but you can't get to the ferry or anything else. And so it's really, really helpful to have a car. And the electric cars, I really think that, at least for us, it seems like a better and easier, it's made our lives a lot easier, being able to plug it in at night and then get up in the morning and go. It's cut down a lot of cost, with 4 kids. And then we have exchange students from Spain and stuff. We do a lot of driving, and anything to cut down on cost is, it's exactly what we need. So thank you for inviting me here. It's great, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you, Emma. Wonderful. Now we'll move on to Winnie.
Yes. Well, I came to the San Juans 41 years ago, and I moved to an island that's off the grid and non-ferry served island. So we were definitely making the options to to go low petroleum. And I'm so grateful for having the opportunity to live like that, because you do just automatically, with the lifestyle, you make choices that are really much better for our environment, as it's turned out in that 41 years. So our solar, we have solar in our home, and we also have 2 electric bikes over there, so we are powered by the sun to that extent over there. And then on Orcas, because we're here part of the year, we have a Prius Prime, and that allows us to drive here on the island without using much gas at all. Last winter, we just bought our car a year ago, and last winter, we weren't here during the summer, but last winter we used it and hardly ever needed to draw on the gas tank. So our gas use last winter was very small, and we were able to plug it in and use Opalco power, which is mostly hydro, so it's a fairly clean source of electric power. And one thing no one's mentioned is that these cars are quiet. I find it really nice to drive because of the silence in my own car. I'm not hearing the motor roaring, and that appeals to me a lot. I like that quiet space when I'm driving in and out of town. And I really appreciate that so many of my neighbors are thinking of these cars and beginning to recognize the importance of getting the gas and the emissions off the road.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So let's start with our first question, which is, what kind of additional charging infrastructure in the San Juan Islands would be most beneficial to EV adoption? And Chris, would you start us off on that one?
So in San Juan County, I took a look at PlugShare, which is a fantastic resource for looking at where charging stations are publicly available. And in San Juan County, I think we have 4 public chargers on Lopez and then 6 each for Orcas and San Juan Island. And currently, the majority of them are down because they are Opalco chargers, and they're in the process of replacement. This is hard. We're having tourists come in, and they would like to find charging stations. So we really need to be thinking about where we can put public charging. One of the, it's just a big challenge having the availability. Some ideas that have been put out there that I think really have a lot of merit. We're in a shared economy now, and residents who maybe live in East Sound might be willing to put their own chargers, make those available for others who are coming in, maybe as tourists, and could plug in at a resident's house. And there's actually a company that is trying to make that hurdle a little bit more, considering a centralized parking location. I think most people would agree with me that when you come to East Sound or to Friday Harbor, getting outside of your vehicle, parking your vehicle and then walking around or exploring on a bicycle, it makes so much more sense to be thinking about a centralized parking location where charging infrastructure could be available for electric vehicles, and then getting folks out into the sidewalks and into our little villages. So ferry terminals and where cars are waiting also provides a big opportunity for getting charging availability out there for EV owners. And then just wanted to mention, I think Raejean had already spoken about this, but Opalco each year does offer rebates for level 2 chargers. And so making sure that those rebates are utilized fully, and maybe more funds that are available could help make sure that there's more charging stations available. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that it's very exciting because the technology for EVs, as well as the charging infrastructure, it's changing. And we are going to be seeing charging infrastructure that is wireless. It's inductive charging, and it's available today, but these types of charging systems would be very easy for us to be thinking about right now as we're reviewing the San Juan County Comprehensive Plan. Where should we be putting inductive charging so that we're bringing electric vehicles to the islands and preserving this pristine bit of heaven that we all live in? So.
Wonderful, thank you. So we had the ideas of putting them by the ferry, centralized parking, your app called Share and Charge. Was that shareandcharge.com or?
That's a company that is trying to provide a way. It's, if you think of Airbnb,
Right.
sharing houses, sharing chargers, and providing some monetary benefit for people who are willing to let strangers use their charging.
Right, and there's another one I will add to that I know in the same market called evmatch.com, and they also do the same thing. Great ideas. Emma, did you have some thoughts on charging?
Well, I have just a couple things. Mostly it's just an extension of what Chris has already said, because I really do think that those are obviously the strongest points there. I was talking about this with my dad, and he brought up just making sure that Orcas is kind of a horseshoe shape, and so making sure that there's stuff at the ferry landing and there's stuff out in Olga. And that's just increasing, I think, the general overall amount of charging stations. 6 is great, and we want more. We would love more. The more you have, the more accessible it is. And obviously, if you want every single person on the island, if that's your goal to have an EV vehicle, that the resources need to be there to support that. And so that, I think, was just the only thing I had to add. I think the ferry landing is a great spot because you're stuck there for at least half an hour, and so it's really great.
Yeah, and thinking about, when do people charge? They're charging when they're doing something else,
Right.
so they might be charging at that ferry station, taking the ferry somewhere and coming back. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's a possibility. The other thing is that Tesla, for bed and breakfasts and hotels, will sometimes put in for free a Tesla charger. It won't be a supercharger, it'll be what they call a destination charger. And because you have a very big tourist population, bed and breakfasts and hotels love this because it makes more people come to them.
Yeah.
And we love it in the San Juans because it makes people come with electric cars
Yeah.
instead leave their gas cars home.
In that case, Dobay might be a good place because
Mhm.
that's on the other side of the island. It's, it's 25 minutes out of town. It's a very
It's
popular.
got a park as
it's
well
got a
for
park,
camping
yes.
as well as the
Kids
resort.
camping and a
Campers.
restaurant, and they host a lot of music festivals, and so it is a real destination on the island.
And you might find, people coming with that Mitsubishi SUV camping, who can then charge it up, and because
Right.
they'd rather be going on the 25 miles electric than going into their gas. Excellent. Good. Any other thoughts on charging? Yes.
Yeah, so one thing that I'm curious about is the future of self-driving cars. And to what extent we might think in the longer term that we can have charging places where nobody is necessarily staying. The cars can drive themselves there, charge up, especially if it's plugless.
Isn't that wonderful? Would be a wonderful future.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, good. All right.
Well, one
Thank
thing
you.
I wanted just to add, because of our geography, we have centralized villages. And when I come into East Sound, for instance, I'm here for a couple hours. And so it's a prime time when I could charge up, and let's say I'm running low on electricity, that then gives me electricity to get home.
Mhm.
So I really think that putting them where people can park their cars for a couple of hours
Mhm.
while they walk to the library,
Mhm.
walk to the store, walk to someplace to have lunch or tea or whatever.
Okay.
And I can see that becoming a really big use.
Mhm.
And especially in the summer, of course, we have more people and they don't have necessarily a home to go to and plug into.
Yeah.
So.
The
Wonderful. Wonderful.
other thing
Yes.
that I might bring up as a young person is if you want to shift the demographic to young people who are maybe buying their first car or teachers or something, putting them in the high schools or different schools, especially if it's a bigger school or if most of the population of the island has to go through there just because there's no public transportation again on the islands really.
But it can be teachers.
It's teachers, and then it's pretty much everyone who can get a learner's permit.
Wonderful. All right. Our next question is, how can we show affordability of EVs to combat the myth of too expensive? And I think we're back on Chris again. Chris?
Okay. So a couple of ideas from me. Opalco has a tremendous resource on their website to help you understand what your potential savings might be based on your own driving patterns. And so I would encourage everyone to take a look at that because that is very helpful. I think Raejean mentioned this in her presentation, the vehicle market. This is really important because it can also allow people to experience what it's like to be an EV owner without really making the largest financial commitment that's required. And so I think that would be valuable. And then I'm very interested in things that sharing vehicles with family members, sharing vehicles with your neighbors potentially. Here in Orcas, we have a member cooperative for our utility. We have a food cooperative. There's just a lot of reasons to really think about why not pay per use instead of make this huge investment that vehicles require. So I think all of those things can help us move electric vehicles so that they really are more affordable.
We also have some nonprofits on the island that have thought about sponsoring some shared cars. And if you have, let's say, a young family that doesn't have a car at all, then on the weekend, when they need to bring things from the lumber yard or they need to make a big run to the grocery store, they could use a car. And it wouldn't have to have the infrastructure of owning one. And then you just have all this money tied up and you park your money. Does it make sense?
Co-ops, wonderful idea. Emma, you have anything on this?
Well, for me, it was just sort of redirecting people from what they're going to buy. So, we do have a lot of people here who, realistically may not be able to afford that front cost. But we also have a lot of people who do like Priuses and have bought Priuses, and when those are, I know a lot of people who have a 2007 Prius, and in a couple years they're gonna want a new car, and so it's sort of building that in now is like, hey, this is the next step for you. You've already taken this step to buy a Prius, and so when this Prius is old, here's a 100% electronic car for you. So that was my idea, and I'm not exactly sure how you would find that target audience, but also people who, they are looking for that next car, they're looking for that next step up. We don't really have a lot of people in the islands sort of 18. Well, we have high schoolers who are 18, but then there's like this missing age gap for about 6 years after that, and so generally people are coming here as established workers with a little bit of money, or they're coming here to work, and so you sort of have high schoolers which don't have very much money, but then adults who generally have a little bit more to spend on a cheap electronic car. So, yeah.
I want to add to your thinking, looking to the future. We're also at a point where the demographic is such that there's a lot of families where they own 2 cars.
Right.
So it's easy to make the jump from having 2 gas cars to trying out an electric car. And as I said, we've found that with our electric car, we use almost no gas. So you right away, you prove it to yourself that by using electric fuel, you're going to save money, and you pay off the car in essence by not having to cover that money. Also, I know the Conservation District uses it for their per diem. They have a loaner car for all their employees to use, and I think Linda has the data on how quickly that car, as a commercial use, is paying itself off, because they used to spend quite a bit getting their staff out to the different farms where they would do their evaluations and so on. Now they use the electric car to come and go, and that saves a tremendous amount of cost for that particular enterprise.
Excellent. So, talking about how to reach people, what publicity most impacts the islanders? Winnie? How do we get to people?
Yeah, I think that was a very good question to ask, because at this point, when I first came to the island, everyone read the newspaper, and we had opalcograms. The general manager then would once a month write these wonderfully informative little articles that went into the paper, and they were so effective. Now, some people read the online paper, some people read the in-print paper, some people don't read the news at all and have no idea what's going on in the community. And so I had to really think hard for this question. And one of the things I came up with, the fact that we do still have our movie theater, and I'm hoping that we can approach our movie theater and get some little spot ads about electric vehicles and how the advantages of having them. I think that would be a good way to reach people. Also, I do think that the little videos, which are on the Opalco webpage and now beginning to be on the Conservation District webpage, those are very effective instructional videos. And so I think that we can use those to reach people, and that is, people like to click on these little short videos, doesn't take much of your time, and tremendous amount of information can be exchanged.
This is a terrific idea. I think you're so on there that people don't have a lot of time, but they do have, the video that we saw a few minutes ago was not intrusive on our time, right? Less than 2 minutes, and yet we got it, right? And so there's another one on maintenance costs and the difference between an EV and a gas car that's wonderful. And so they could all be public service announcements, and there's a movie theater on in Friday Harbor and
Yes.
also here in Orcas. So, you know, those could be hitting people on the big screen. I think it'd be fabulous. Great idea. So now, what other nonprofit entities might help get grant money for charging infrastructure? And we have Chris?
Sure.
Yeah.
So in my professional background, I've done a lot of grant writing for different types of sustainable transportation and emission reduction projects. And so as I was thinking about this question, I was really thinking that it's important for us to not think small. We need to really be thinking about the opportunities that are across many modes. And electric vehicles are one way to get around, but we're gonna see electric recreational vessels, we're gonna see electric airplanes. I mean, all of us know about Kenmore Air, and you know, there's many people that are using airplanes to fly on and off the islands. Those will be electrified.
And our
so-
governor,
Yeah,
just recently, he's really promoting the electric ferry.
ferries, exactly. And so these are huge opportunities. And so as I'm thinking about coming up with grant projects, we really should be considering grant projects that are putting charging infrastructure for not only vehicles, but also some of these other modes. And when you start to think about projects, big, transformative, innovative projects like that, that's where funders are interested in putting money. And so there are nonprofits. The Rocky Mountain Institute is interested in sustainable transportation and frequently looks at what partners to bring together for specific projects. Here in Washington, and then thinking about community development grants that may be available at the local, state, and other jurisdictional level for different projects. Because again, you know, if I'm thinking about a centralized parking area in East Sound, where we're at now, because I want people to get out of their vehicles, walk, enjoy this beautiful place that we're at, that really, you know, helps our community be a much better place, more sustainable, people are happier, and so I just think we need to be thinking beyond that. So there are definitely some ideas I have with different places to look for grants, and those were some of my starting ideas.
I think that's sorry.
Go ahead, Emma.
I was just gonna say, I think that's a great idea to look beyond the islands to see what Washington State resources, and just, you know, we have a very small, tight-knit community, but there's only so much, and so to look off and to say what are the big businesses or the big nonprofits that we can involve in this to support us, because I think they will and they want to. That's their purpose. That's why they're there. So thank you.
It sounds like the beginning of an exciting project, maybe
Well,
here.
thank you,
That's a big one, and I like that. All the kinds of electric vehicles and all the ways that people experience the islands, and looking at it from a strategic point of view, involving multiple people and getting grant money for that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Very good. These are wonderful thought leaders, aren't they, in our community? Great ideas coming up. How can we attract more women to EVs? Winnie?
Well, I think women respond to good sense. Smart women, smart choices. And so having these graphs in place that compare fuels certainly makes sense to women. I think that the idea that you don't have to make a special appointment to have your oil changed and do the maintenance and so forth is very appealing. And as I say, the silence, I really like when I get in my car. I've been busy. I appreciate that spacious silence and not even the roar of the motor. I also think that women respond. They want to do the right thing. They often have children, and they would like to see the future look brighter for their families. And so I think that they're ready to jump. And as soon as we can get the technology on the road and the convenient places to recharge, and they will come. And so I'm looking forward to riding this, what I see as a wave, as the technology makes it available for us as consumers to make those choices with our dollars. I really think there will be a response, and the whole transportation will change drastically and stupendously from my point of view.
Winnie, do you think women, or do any of you comment on, are we more impacted at all by the health consequences of burning gas? And I know here in the islands you have pretty clean air, and yet I was at the bottom of Friday Harbor when the ferry came in and all these trucks came out, and you know, if you're standing on that corner, it's like there are fumes, and I don't know if anyone's measuring it, but that can't be good for the air quality. Is there any measurement of air quality going on here at the, do we measure it?
I don't know that anybody has, but I agree with you. The contrast to our usual area, it just gags you, and I worry about the ferry workers in it all day long. But yes, I think women definitely, as I mentioned, they're concerned for the future generations. They're concerned for the future of the planet. We simply have to stop this. Although it seemed like a great leap forward to come up with the internal combustion, we've well proved to ourselves that it is time for us to make this huge shift, and this is the wave. So I am excited about that, and I can't believe that all of us, men and women, won't rise to the occasion when they have a choice.
And that is the thing, that we have a choice. With the wonderful thing about electric vehicles is, unlike policy things that take longer to change in Washington at the state level, this is something we can elect with our own personal dollars, our own personal budget. We used to spend it over here, now we're going to spend it over here. It's a choice really for the better technology. We used to have landlines, now we have cell phones. Now we can hardly remember what it was like just to have a landline. And young people just go straight to cell phone, they never have landline. So, you know, it's that kind of shift, and it is happening, although as we pointed out earlier, not as fast as we would like it to be. And I want to leave with one important area for us to explore, and that is when we buy anything, you know, they say that you don't buy anything that you haven't first mentally possessed. And so when we think about EVs, that means the car dealers throw you the keys, say, go, drive it home. Drive it home, put it in the driveway. I look good in this car. The car looks good in front of my house. I can imagine having this car. There, you know, it's a quick, you know, it closes the gap on that. I'm there with it, right? Well, we have this issue of not having the cars here on the island, other than a few used ones. You know, where do we test drive? How are we going to do that? Because knowing what great power it has to help a person get to a buying decision by feeling and touching and driving something. It is a major purchase. People, I know it's an Amazon world, and we just order things on Amazon and they magically appear without us ever touching them beforehand. However, with any car, you know, and still there may be some buyers of electric cars that do that mail order their EVs, especially in Washington. Cars may not be available, and so they'll order them from California and have them shipped up here. Still, how are we going? We know that it will accelerate things more, and even retailers will tell us if a person walks in a shop and even touches a garment, their chances of buying that garment are higher. So we've got to get people close to the cars and in the cars and driving the cars to see if they like the cars and how it works in their life, to get them comfortable with it. So all of that is to say, how do we make test drives happen in the San Juan Islands?
Our car shows were very exciting, and many people came to them. Both the ones that you did a year ago that was separate specifically for EVs, and then when we've had the Green Home Tours, we've used EVs on those tours, and when we do our energy fairs, excuse me, the car aspect of the energy fairs has always been very much a draw, and it's an opportunity for people to try cars out. The bicycles too, we've always tried to have e-bicycles.
But are they actually getting behind the wheel, or they're sitting in the car and feeling and touching it, right? But they're not getting behind no one's giving them the keys.
Well,
At a car
occasionally
show.
that happens too.
It does?
Because there are neighbors that know each other
There we go.
that are comfortable, or ride with them in the car.
A ride and drive, and that's good too.
You know, those of us who've just bought electric cars tend to be the new converts, and we have this
That's it.
this zeal of the new convert. And so, yeah, it's really fun to take people for a ride. I know I've done that in town. They go, oh, how do you like it? Well, hop in, and then they get familiar with it. And yeah.
So the answer is car shows, they can feel and touch it, they can sit in them, and even do some ride and drives. And occasionally on a one-on-one basis, someone will, let someone else sit in their car or drive their car.
Yeah.
There's another idea that I've seen this happen in San Diego. There's an outfit that calls electric car guest drives. And what they do is they turn up, and they have insurance for this. And they turn up in a park, say, and it's pre-announced, and they'll bring, and they'll say, guarantee you will drive a Tesla, okay? And they'll have one Tesla there, and then they'll have other EVs. And they will run a circuit of test drives. Now, it's going to be several $1,000s cost to bring an outfit like that here, or sometimes they'll even charge $20 a person to be able to test drive. But hey, if I'm really serious about buying an electric car, I would pay $20, wouldn't you? If I'm getting to that point of signing a contract and ordering one, to be able to test drive it. It beats getting on a ferry and going to wherever you would go, Bellingham, right, all the way there. So electric car guest drive is another way to get test drives, and then it's just person to person. It could be that with the EVA, the Electric Vehicle Association in the San Juan Islands, that you have sometimes little coffee meetings on each island because you are spread out, and then it could be that people bring their electric cars. And it could be that they, allow someone to either do a ride and drive in the passenger seat, or that they are able to give them and go on their own insurance and give them the keys to the car and take a drive. And counting these things would be really good idea too, to see how many, and let's get some goals going. How many test drives can we get going on the San Juan Islands? Because that will help propel us into really getting these cars in the hands of drivers. Does that make sense to everyone? Do we have any questions out there from the audience? Any more?
Yeah. Oh, well, I have a few questions, but one question is about, one of the things that I think is the most polluting thing here in the islands is these diesel trucks.
Yes.
And I think there are some fleets coming on that are not really that dirty diesel, but I'm curious if you guys know about what progress is being made here, or might be soon.
So I can speak to that. Sharon, you're completely correct. So diesel trucks, and we talked about the health issues a little bit earlier. I do want to underscore that in the islands, when you look at the demographics of the vehicle population up here, there are many islanders who drive older vehicles, and those are more polluting. And so when you bring an electric vehicle to San Juan County, the improvement, it's a much bigger improvement than if you're just displacing a Toyota Prius to a Nissan Leaf. If you're taking an old diesel truck off the road and instead now driving an electric vehicle, that's so much better for our air quality. To the point about the heavy-duty diesel trucks and what's happening. So there's a couple of moving pieces going on right now. Those vehicles, there's fewer heavy-duty trucks out there than there are light-duty electric vehicles. And so the road to commercialization with light-duty EVs has gone much faster just because there's a lot of folks that are putting money into it, they're buying it, they're really demonstrating that the technology works great and it's available. With the heavy duty sector, there's specific applications that are difficult. There's a reason that you're using a 300 horsepower diesel engine in those vehicles, because they need that sort of horsepower behind it. The good thing with electric motors, though, is they're so much more efficient. You have tremendous torque, you have all of these things, so it will happen. And there are a number of vehicle manufacturers that are in the space that are actually offering electric motors for Class 8 trucks that we're seeing for short haul applications, like deliveries out to the island. We should see these being placed in the coming years. And there's actually some money that is available for that type of vehicle replacement. If we can displace a diesel truck with an electric truck, we should be doing that. And I can talk about some of the grant opportunities for that, but it is coming, and it is starting to be more and more available for folks, and that is really exciting because those vehicles are really harmful.
And what a good question that was for the impact of the diesel and
Yeah.
getting rid of it. Thank you for that.
Can I ask you another question?
Please.
We've been kind of tossing around the idea of having a regularly scheduled electric bus, because it would be, the idea of having a central place where people come and park in East Sound is a really good idea. We still have a lot of traffic, and if we could really encourage people to come into town, just walk on the ferry and come into town and have a regularly scheduled electric bus that goes through the islands. We've had one in a gas-powered bus in the summertime only, but it'd be great to have something more like what they have on Whidbey that runs more times a year, more trips, that if we can find a way to fund that and have it be an electric bus, that would be just really wonderful.
Nice idea, and what a great statement that is to all the tourists who come here, that, ecotourism is big. And so when you tap into that, you're tapping into the basic fundamental, jobs in the San Juans, basic livelihood in the San Juans. And this is really, really good stuff, as well as cleaning up the carbon emissions in the air. Very nice idea for an electric bus. Anybody else?
We have an online question.
Yes.
How can we facilitate and support a driver education program within the county school district that provides electric vehicles for student drivers, and what, if any, are their insurance issues?
That's a great idea.
Very good idea.
So I can speak a little bit
Please
to that.
do.
The driving program that most students go through is Monroe's driving, and it's based in Anacortes. We don't actually have separate driving instructors for each of the islands, and so normally what happens is once a year there'll be a driver's ed class for the people who are of age. It happens a little bit more frequently on San Juan, so maybe twice a year. And so that program, I think, especially would really have to be targeted the Monroes and not necessarily something on Orcas. Now, if there was a side program that came in, after kids had taken driver's ed or while they were taking driver's ed, and offered to let them drive electric vehicles, I think that would be great, and that would be something that we as a community could do. But in terms of changing the way driver's ed is taught, that is not, that would be an off-island thing that would have to be changed. But not that it's not doable at all. And I think there's not, whenever you're having student drivers drive vehicles, there's a whole bunch of different insurance stuff that would need to happen for that. So it's not just a normal insurance, but they have their permits, and so it would be doable to have a program come in and basically supplement what they're learning. It would be a lot of work, but it would definitely be doable.
And so the EV Association could help with the part of educating high school students on electric cars, getting them interested in knowing about electric cars before they even become drivers. Like,
Yes.
When you're 14, you're dreaming about driving. That's what high school kids do when you're 14 and 15, right? You're dreaming about what car am I going to have when I'm of age. And we can tap into that while we teach about climate change, while we teach about, emissions and air quality. and then show young people that there's another choice that they didn't realize that their parents
Yeah.
have. At that point, the control is in the parents' hands until you get old enough to work and own a car. But yeah,
Do you
go
mind
ahead,
if I just cut in a
please.
little bit? So the other idea just off that of targeting young people is also targeting elementary school students.
Okay.
One of the advantages of living in such a beautiful place with such a loving community is that there's a lot of environmental work. There's a lot of environmental groups around the islands, and so it's not uncommon to have elementary school students working with local scientists, studying the environment, going for beach cleanups and that sort of stuff. And so at that point, kids have a lot of curiosity. They really want to learn, and they're not yet driving or really thinking about that, but they want information. And so if EV becomes part of that information, that package that they get exposed to in elementary school, I think that, this is more of a long game plan, but by the time they get to high school, that just becomes part of their story and part of what they look to. And so I think that's a long-term changing the culture around it and saying this is, not only is this an option, but this is what's best. This is what we do. And so that was just my little snippet to add in there.
I love it, and I love sort of ending with the young people. So let's make this a good time to end our panel discussion and our talk. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there's a little deadline coming up in the state of Washington, and that is that in a couple of months it is estimated that Washingtonians will lose their sales tax exemption. And this is a value in the thousands of dollars, $2,000 or $3,000 that people save now off EVs, that when that cap of 7,500 EVs sold is reached, it will go away until and unless our legislators renew it or extend the cap or lift the cap, please. But this is where we're at now, so if you are teeter-tottering on the edge of buying an electric vehicle, if you are watching this, and I'm assuming you're watching this and you're here today because you're interested in electric vehicles, consider doing it now. You saw some of the wonderful cars that we have available immediately. Get your sales tax exemption. This is a significant amount of money, so I encourage you to take advantage of that and do it now, and why wait? So I thank you very much for watching today. I'd like to give a hand of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. Winnie, Emma, Chris, and Ryan for his great AV and everything else that he does for electric vehicles. And thank you for coming today. And drive electric, clean the air. It's important for future generations. Thank you.